I've been doing readings since the age of 2. I'm like, where? In your crib? Like, where have you been doing readings? Like, we can barely talk at 2. Like, I have a Rattle here. How do you connect with Rattle or the Muppets? Like, no. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another week of Stage Door Medium. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jimmy, your host. If you're new to the podcast, I'm guessing some of you might be today because of our guest, and I know the Green Machine brings its own slew of fans to each podcast. So if you're unfamiliar with what this show is about, I've been a practicing medium for just about the greater half of the last 10 years, and my experiences have led me to just be able to connect with some of the most incredible Broadway artists. So when the pandemic hit, I got this idea of starting just a weekly podcast where I sit down with the artists and we explore the connections between energy and artistry, there's so many actually. So that's what we do. A question that came in for me, and I've been sitting with this because I want to answer it as best as I can. If somebody was not the kindest here in this life, do they stay like that on the other side? Which I was like, oh, that's because I've encountered it quite a bit. So from my experience, no. We also have to, I think we also have to chunk out, like, what types of people are we talking about? Like, are we talking about serial killers? Or are we talking about grandpa who had a drinking problem and was distant from his kids? I rank those as very, very different, types of people. And the serial killer folks, those are people that would never, ever, ever be allowed in during a reading. So if you sit with a medium, they're almost always going to start with a prayer where we kind of set the intentions of who are we allowing to come in. So for me, it's like the equivalent of, if I start with a prayer, it's like I give out a Zoom link that has a password. If I don't start with a prayer, I'm giving out a Zoom link where any creep could be joining the call. So for me, what it looks like on my end, so if you're a medium in training or you just want to know why I make the weird faces sometimes during readings, I'm looking over at like my 1 o'clock right now, which is where my guide sits during the reading. And if I see him do this to a soul, it means they're not fully allowed to come sit with me at the table, as bizarre as that sounds. It doesn't mean that they were a serial killer. It just means that I know I have to go into the reading with a sensitivity, because whoever I'm sitting with that's here in the physical might have some bad blood with the soul that's coming through. So maybe we have a father coming through that was abusive, or we have somebody who we found out, let's say, cheated on grandma repeatedly, and we hold this. Sometimes they will just do this to let me know, okay, be really gentle with this one. If they come off as grouchy, I think sometimes I'm just going to take a liberty. I think sometimes mediums misread that and they think they're still angry on the other side. What they're doing is they are recreating how they were here so we can describe that to the client. So when I first started reading, if I saw a soul that would do this and be like, I don't want to talk with you, I used to go, oh my goodness, they don't want to talk with me. What's wrong? But then I'm like, well, that makes no sense. Like, clearly they're talking with me right now. If they didn't want to be seen, they wouldn't be seen. And then I went, oh, would they have not been receptive to mediums when they were here in the physical? And the answer is always yes. So if they drag their heels, they're not like that anymore. Same thing for the souls. Most of the time, if I see this up, it also means at some point an apology, most likely, is coming during that. I have never encountered a soul that has never wanted to apologize for their wrongdoing. Never. So that's just my experience, but I would like to say that they grow. On the other side, they can work with family members. They can work with their guides. So for example, if you had somebody that was a member of the KKK, something that they might be doing on the other side would be helping people of color cross over. So they basically do things that seem appropriate in terms of service and giving back on the other side based off of what they didn't really learn while they were here in the physical. So I guess that's a whole topic, I think, but for right now, that's the best I can try to answer it with a truncated version. So, okay. So our guest today, super, super talented, like crazy talented. I fell down the rabbit hole and I just admitted to her, I'm like, I think I have a talent, like hardcore crush on you. And in a little bit, I'll explain all these crazy ways. Like when we talk about how the universe is a small place, like how many different ways we like the roads kind of led us to meet each other, which is crazy. So she made her Broadway debut in the Broadway production of Be More Chill, and then she is currently, which is so cool to say, I mean, currently Elphaba in the national tour of Wicked, which is set to return touring in August. Correct? August? Yeah. So I can't wait. Please help me in welcoming the incredible Talia Suskauer to our show today. Oh.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I am so good. I'm so happy to be here and I get to talk with you again and I'm so happy.
That's what I say because I'm like, I'm so fortunate where I think I have a leg up on some of these other podcasters because sometimes they only get to meet you once. And I'm like, we got to do it in 2 parts so that way you can process the reading and then we can come back another day. So
Right.
I'm real fortunate where I get to, really, get to connect twice. So,
Yeah.
oh goodness, let's just start with, you're doing well. Life is good.
Yeah. It's been a wild year for all of us. I think that's fair to say. And so now I finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. Flights are booked. I'm ready to go back into rehearsal. And with that comes a lot of excitement and anxiety and stress and all of the above. So I'm feeling a combination of all of it right now, but very just grateful to be going back.
How much of Wicked is so after a year and a half of being off? How much is muscle memory? Like, could you, and I guess, are you relearning the entire show from scratch? How does this work?
I don't know. I mean, I do know based on what I know of former Elphabas that there are people that have been out of the show for months and maybe even a couple years that just can kind of shake off the dust and go back into it. I'm hoping that's the same with me. I've started to I feel like I've forgotten a bunch of the lines, but I think once I get back into the environment, we'll see what happens. I really think I'm going to be okay. I know generally where I'm supposed to go, and I think once I get a little refresher, I'm going to be fine.
Yeah.
But I mean, I did almost 200 shows, so that has to stay
So she's in
in
your
you
bloodstream.
somewhere. Yeah.
She's definitely in your bloodstream.
She's in my bones.
Then. She's in your, yes. I think the same works with, I don't know. I can't speak for all mediums, but for me, if I don't practice for a while, it's like vocal. It's a muscle, and if you don't use it, like the max I will take off is about a week. So I have some weeks that are blocked off in the summer. But it's tricky because if I'm on vacation, I'm most likely not meditating. I'm most likely not sitting in the power or trying to do mini reads on people. If I'm off, and I want to appreciate that time. So I definitely have to go like the day before. I have to go, okay, now I'll do a practice read on someone, or now I got to get back into it because I will feel rusty if I don't. So
Of course.
I'm right there with you.
I think that actors are athletes and dancers are athletes. And I think a lot of people watching the show don't think about it that way, but we are. And I think, anyone that uses their muscles like we do in these very unique ways, we're athletes and we have to get back into shape. And that's going to take a little bit, but I feel very fortunate that we are all in it together. It's not one person that's been out for a year and a half. It's a company,
Even while you're doing it, like I feel secure in my ability as a medium, but it's still hard. I mean, by all means, it's not like I get through it and I go, oh, that was easy today. Like it's difficult. It's just, I know how to navigate it more now if I keep up.
I think the thing that scares me the most, and it's only scary because it's hard, and I had to go through it the first time, it's just getting used to it. I had the Elphaba before me, Marianne Torres, who's brilliant. I asked her, I was like, if you can give me one piece of advice, like how am I going to get through this? And she was like, you're not going to like what I have to say, but you just have to do it. You just have to do it. And at that time, that was a frustrating answer to get, but she was completely right. I think what I'm most afraid of is that long period of adjustment.
Yeah.
You know, it's just doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it until you're like, oh, this is me. This is what I do now. And I think that hopefully will be a little shorter this time, but it's still, you know, it's a period of adjustment.
Gosh, oh my goodness. It's such a valid point though. I mean, can I ask though, for let's say if it feels weird in your body, does that translate to the audience, or is that some
Almost never. Like I had my mom has seen the show a million times, and so is my boyfriend, and they can probably tell that I had an off show, or they can tell, like they've seen it so many times, so it's like splitting hairs, but they can tell. But if I ask a, you know, a regular audience member who hasn't seen the show in a long time, or oh, if I say, hey, you know, how was that? And they were like, that was amazing, whatever.
Yeah.
And they cannot tell if the energy was a little bit off.
I find the same. Like I had just done gallery readings and I didn't realize of all nights, I started it on the first night of retrograde. I was like, let's pick this date. So I go in there and I'm like, why do I feel like, now mind you, I'm like, it went so beautifully. And I looked at my husband and now mind you, because just the same with your boyfriend, like they know we might beat ourselves up. And I'm like, he's like, no, it was great, but I know you're going to beat yourself up. And I'm like, no, I don't feel that way. I'm like, wait, should I? And he's like, no, it was really good. But I mean, I go out there and I'm so glad I did it. While they were making smudge sticks, I had to walk around just to start seeing which parts of my body were going off. So when I walked past one table, this started going off. So like I had a notebook and I was like, okay, I was like, drug or suicide, middle table. And sure enough, it made sense. But because when I started doing the readings, I literally felt like I was blindfolded, like it was like a piñata game. And, or better yet, like you're looking at a Monet. And you know how if you're super up close to a Monet, you're like, what am I looking at? And it wasn't until I started to step back and walk around that I was like, oh, like I opened my eyes after the prayer and I felt like I was in an elevator of like 500 people. I would imagine so. I'm just going to guess. Did you always have the bug? Like, did you know that you were going to do this growing up?
Yeah, I mean, from the moment I could talk, I was singing and I was dancing, and I just was a ball of energy. My younger sister and I would put on shows in the living room. You know, we had a costume box and we were just going for it. And I have very, very supportive parents who just encouraged it and lifted us up. And they're both not in theater, but they just love it so much. And I think I have a video of me when I was 4 in my preschool production. They did like a version of The Wizard of Oz, and I was singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow at 4.
It's crazy.
And which is funny, little Wizard of Oz connection there. But yeah, there wasn't another option. And I was just, again, very fortunate to have parents that didn't force me into another option, you know? And which was, I grew up in a very artistic community. I went to middle school for the arts. It was a public magnet middle school where I was able to do theater in school, and went to the high school that is kind of similar, another magnet arts high school. I was a theater major there and did community theater, and I was just surrounded by it down here. So I feel lucky.
In high school, I'm always fascinated by this because I'm often asked, like, did you know that you were a medium or that you were supposed to do this or that you had some type of, the answer is like no and yes. Like, no, I didn't think I was going to be doing readings for, you know, for Broadway folks and TV folks down the line. But I knew that I had some ability that others didn't tap into or didn't want to tap into. But for you, like doing community theater in high school, like, and don't worry, I know however you answer this, it's not going to sound snotty, but like, were you like, okay, like, I guess I'm pretty talented. Does this make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that I worked really hard, and I was oftentimes made fun of for it in high school. You know, you're too theatery, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Or, you know, just made fun of for my extreme passion for it, constantly singing musical theater in my car. And I did a production of Ragtime when I was 16, and I played the mother in Ragtime, which is just my favorite musical ever. It's the most gorgeous show. And I remember getting up on stage, and even though I was 16 and I was, a couple decades away from the age of this character, I felt like I could feel her and tap into her experience and use my experience to relate to her. And getting up there and singing that big song, Back to Before, and standing up there and feeling the connection with the audience. And not only did I say, I want to do this for the rest of my life, but I can do this. I know that I can. I believe in myself. And I was validated by my teachers and by my parents and by the audience. And it might sound weird, but I really felt it in my soul that this was what I was meant to be doing.
I love what you said, though, this idea of I trained. I really dislike when people will come up to me, and it's not they mean it with the best of intentions, but they're like, oh, I'll either get, oh, you're lucky that you're able to do this, or like, oh, you've got the gift. And I'm like, no, I'm like, I think anyone can do this. I think anyone can sing. However, I believe that I'm skilled in what I do. I believe that I'm highly skilled because I've trained. So, because sometimes people will go, are you nervous? And for me, I always have nerves going into every single reading, but I only go like, I'm really nervous or I'm afraid if I don't feel prepared or if I didn't train. And so for me, most of the time I go, yeah, I got a little butterflies because I want to do a great job, but I'm not nervous because I have trained. You know what I mean? It's not like a fluke.
And you can rely on that training.
Bingo. It's like,
and you're not winging it.
You're not going out there. Let's see if I get through this, over this bridge of Wicked, let's see how this goes. It's okay. I know my body. I know what so somebody brought up a question that I think it's fascinating to me. They had talked about, and you hit on something so real, because as someone that directs high school theater, again, if you're listening at home and you don't know, full time, I teach, and I love what I do. I love what I do for this, and that's that. I feel like I grew up with, I think my parents grew up in a generation where it was very much like you couldn't have more than one career. It was like you're either this or you're this. So I feel very fortunate that I am able to do both. But I find it interesting you talked about playing mother at 16. And I remember, we had done a production of Gypsy my first year directing, and we had an 18-year-old Rose who was like, she graduated and she was so, I mean, she went for musical theater and she's doing well. And I remember, when you say it to some of the snobs, they give you shit because they're like, oh, well, what can they access at 16 or 18?
Right.
But then I think it's hysterical that the same snobs are like the same folks in college that are going to be like, well, you know what? We're casting you at 19 as Rose, but it's a college production. I'm like, there is no difference in 1 year. I mean, if we're really, so can I ask, like, with limited life experience at 16, how do you, because you said it so beautifully, you're like, I felt like she was a part of me. How do you tap into that and still have the role be taken seriously?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that everyone, doesn't matter what phase of your life you're at, if you're 5, if you're 85, you have very real emotions that you experience. If you're literally crying over spilled milk, that hurts you in your heart when you're 5, right?
No.
Just as someone who's 85 has lost a loved one, or, an 85, like someone breaking in your house or and stealing your treasured belongings. So, I mean, we all experience different things. It doesn't make anyone's problems more, upsetting than anyone else's. They're equally as upsetting for whoever's going through them. So at age 16, I could tap into heartbreak. What I knew, what my personal experience of heartbreak was, I could tap into my personal experience of feeling restricted or restrained in my life, in different aspects of my life, and connect it to this woman who was living at the turn of the 20th century and who did not feel free. And who wanted to be independent. And so, I mean, the best you can, just tapping into your own experience. I truly believe that everyone can do that if you're brave enough to do it, if you're brave enough to go there, right?
You hit the nail on the head. Somebody that lost a parent, let's say at 10 years old, is going to have access to emotion that, let's say, like my mom just recently lost her parents within the last couple of years. And you can't tell me that a 10-year-old, let's say, that loses both of their parents in a tragic, that they don't know what that emotion is.
Right.
I was watching Harry Potter. I did a getaway in the Catskills, and I was watching, it was raining. So we binge watched them. And I was watching, there was this beautiful scene. It hits home, I think, more as an adult. All I know is that there's like these invisible creatures that can only be seen if you have experienced loss or if you've seen someone pass. And it hit home with me in a way that I'm like, it made me think of like these students that I teach, or that when you were that age, like doesn't matter if you've experienced something in any capacity, that then can go into the tool belt. Like even if we chalk it up to puppy love and we go through a breakup, that's still that 15-year-old's first experience with rejection, with loss, or you know what I mean? And it's then those experiences that we expound upon and enter into adulthood with. So they're so important.
So important.
And I get frustrated too, because I feel like, or not frustrated. I'm asked sometimes as a medium, were you getting heavy things to begin with? And no, but I found that the things that I went through, really bad breakup, for example, all of a sudden, because I went through it, I found that early on in my readings, I had a magnet for sensing it in someone else. And because I went through it, and because you can look at someone's face and go, you've got the same look that I had 10 years ago. Or maybe it's just an energetic, like equal sign. And so I always say my experiences that I've gone through almost give me a magnet or maybe a magnifying lens for how to spot things better. But then in terms of the really heavy stuff, for me as a medium, you don't really get that in the beginning. You're going to get the grandparents, you're going to get a pet, and it's not until they'll throw something at you that's like really, I don't want to say spooky because it's never spooky, but they will share something with you. Like you'll get a soul that comes through then from a murder or from a drug overdose, and deliberately to see, okay, how does the medium handle it? And if we're able and we go, okay, I handled that, you'll start to get more of those as a way of, the more they find that the more comfortable you get with the topic, you might encounter more of them. So I wasn't getting suicides in the beginning. I wasn't getting drug overdoses. I was getting happy grandma. And then as the more you develop and you start to go, okay, I know how to navigate this terrain, then I was getting like the abusive dad, or I was getting this. And it makes, I hopefully if you're listening at home, it makes sense. But basically we build on what we know. So another great question that came in, which I think is so fascinating, is let's say we're trying to train for Broadway. How much is trainable in your opinion versus natural ability? Because I'm going to be very honest. When I fell down the rabbit hole, I saw the clip of you actually singing Back to Before, and I saw you singing All Falls Down. And I'm like, okay, at that high school level watching, I'm like, okay, this is, let's say I didn't know that you went on to Elphaba. I would have then Googled what happened to her. What happened to her? Is she still performing? And so in your opinion, because I know you also coach, are there folks that, I guess, and not in a rude way, are there folks where you can look and you're like, I'm not sure we're ever going to get you to an Elphaba role? But
yes.
Yeah. Can you expound upon that?
Yeah. And it's not for lack of practicing or trying. It's like, if I could compare it to athletes for a second, it's like those kids in sports that just have the mind for it and have the paired with the athletic ability. And there are some kids that are never going to go on to the major leagues and really just enjoy it and work hard at it, but aren't going to get there because they don't have it. Right. I think there's a certain amount. I think you can only train up to a certain like level. I think that if someone really, really wants it and works really hard and puts in their 10,000 hours, but doesn't necessarily have the raw talent, they'll be okay. And maybe they'll work to some capacity. Um, but I don't know, like if you, for example, if you want to do musical theater and you are tone deaf, or there's not really a nicer way to say that, but
No,
it's
I
true.
get
It's
it.
like if you're tone deaf, um, you can work on it, but there's really only so much. If you can't hear that specifically, there's not really much we can do. When a kid comes in and they are just, you can feel the potential. Not only do they want to really work hard, but you also just, they have that
Yeah.
kind of quality to them. That's the most exciting. And also the kids that you get sometimes that like maybe their parents just want them to have a lesson, but they're really good. And you just have to kind of light that fire in them.
Yeah.
Like you can do this if you want to do this. If you don't, that's okay. But if you want to do it, you have to still work hard. You can be super, super talented and not work hard. And I don't know if you'll necessarily get to where you want to be
Sure.
professionally.
There's a when I directed Mamma Mia a couple of years ago, we had a student that had, I think, done some theater, like some small theater outside of school. But for me, when I run auditions, I don't like to look at them. I like to just close my eyes and be like,
Yeah.
do I believe you? And can I see this? And she came in, I want to say she was a junior. Yes, I'm just making sure. She was a junior. She came in and all these other girls, everyone and their mother was singing like "The Winner Takes It All," and I love the song if it's done well. And then it just was not. I felt like I was in church and like hearing like the church cantors sing like "The Winner Takes It All," and then this girl comes in there, and there was such a rawness to her voice and such a vulnerability, and I think it was, who knows, it could have just been the fact that she was a little nervous going into it. But however she did it, it worked in the fact that it lent itself to vulnerability for that song. But then she also knew, okay, like I have to belt at the end, because I get so frustrated when you see some of these vocal coaches going, well, no, you really can just sing that in a head voice at the end. That C, just do it in a head voice. And I'm like, you can, but if we're training somebody, like that ain't gonna get you the job in the real world.
No.
Like,
and also dramatically, that's not why it was written.
Bingo. And I told her, I was like, this is a battle cry. This is a battle cry at the end of that song. And when they changed it for the movie, where Meryl Streep's at the top of the, Calicari or whatever, she doesn't belt it. I'm like, they kind of reworked it so it made sense, but I'm still like, that's not what you're hearing in the music. You're hearing intensity. No. And I remember, oh God, there were waves when she got cast, because people were like, well, I've been doing this longer. But I looked at her and I was like, you have raw ability. You have raw talent. You are somebody that is going to come in going, all right, I want to work. I want to learn. And now she's over at AMDA. She just finished her first year, and she's flourishing. And I'm so, so proud of her. So anyway, if you're listening, Skylar, we love you. So
yay, Skylar.
Yes.
I also feel like, when we talk about kids who might not necessarily have the it factor when it comes to performing, who still really just have the drive, I think there are a lot of kids in high school and middle school that don't see a place for themselves other than the stage, because they don't know that it exists. Like there are hundreds and hundreds of different jobs in theater. In just theater alone, if you open it up to theater and film, I mean, thousands of different kinds of jobs, right? Yeah. So I think that, I don't know, I always try to encourage people to expand their horizons, So, hey, if musical theater performing is not in your future, check this out. Check out company management, check out house management, check out hair, makeup, wardrobe, like that. The list goes on and on and on, and every job is integral, right? So,
and it's this idea of, well, do you want to be on stage, or is it more about, this is the community that I feel like I belong in?
I want to be a part of this.
Bingo.
And there's a place for you.
I had some of our students that were I don't mean it rudely, not the greatest singers or dancers, but they had the most impeccable timing and they knew the intricacies of the score. And I'm like, you need to be working lights. You need to be working, because your average high school tech kid does not know, let's say we're doing Piazza. Not that they don't know seven. They don't know the time.
No.
But if you have a kid that knows music, they might not sing it the greatest, but they know it. There's, you're an asset now. So I always,
or, hey, I've got great rhythm and timing. Great. We need you in stage management.
Bingo. You call the show then. You know what I mean? Like I always have such a respect for the stage management, because you really have to be a musical kid.
You have to
heart.
be. You have to be. Mm-hmm.
And the same, in terms of, I guess, to answer the question from my end about trainable, I believe that everyone's trainable to be a medium. I think not everyone's going to be, but I do think everyone has the ability. We all get things.
Really?
We're driving and we're like, oh, why did I just think of like something that my grandmother would have said to me? Or, I really miss, I don't know, I'm just going to, I make up a name. I really miss Michelle. I should call her. I haven't spoken with her in 2 years. Boom, the phone rings from Michelle and you're like, oh, that's weird. I always, or sometimes you just know when things are going to happen. Everyone has this ability. It's not like unlucky. I hate
That's so interesting.
That's what I believe. I hate when you have these mediums that will try to get street cred with you and they're like, well, I am third generation medium. I'm like, okay, literally all that means is just that it was fostered within the family and you were taught that it's not stigmatized. It's so literally, I'm like, okay, like that doesn't, or I love when they're like, I've been doing readings since the age of 2. I'm like, where? In your crib? Like, where have you been doing readings? Like, we can barely talk at 2. Like, I have a Rattle here. How do you connect with Rattle or the Muppets? Like, no. Like, I think you, and as a medium, you don't need to do that. You don't need to try to sell people on, oh, I a 4th generation or something, or my great something was from the Salem witch trials. Like, no, if you train, which is, I guess, where I'm going with this. I know it's a long wraparound answer, but I think the stuff that you really need to train on is, there's certain things that I don't think can be taught. How to talk to people. Like I don't like when I see the mediums that are straight shooters and that are really rude. And that's what I think makes certain mediums more apt to be a great one, is if you have the skills of, I know how to talk to somebody. I know how to have somebody crying in front of me, and sometimes not even coddling them, just going, I'm sorry, can I do anything for you? Do you know what I mean? It's that stuff that can't be taught. You can learn how to channel. It's that type of stuff.
Bedside manner is so important. It's just, I think it's everything, because what if a medium just relayed almost brought up something traumatizing in a way that wasn't gentle?
Bingo.
And I think that could have a very negative impact on somebody.
Yeah, the bedside manner, I think, can't be taught. Or you have some of these folks, and I would imagine even in your career, they embrace it as just, well, this is part of my personality. And
yeah, I'm a straight shooter. This is just what I do. I give it to you bluntly. And sometimes that's not the best way. I think that you can be straightforward without being an asshole.
I'm so freaking tired of the word straight shooter, because we have glorified the term and masked it in a way to mean like, I'm going to be on, like, no, like so many of these straight shooters that I see are assholes. And I'm like, this is not how you, and it makes me mad, because I will then have a client that will come in going, who had met with a straight shooter before, and they then develop a negative image or stereotype of light workers or mediums. And so then it's my job to go like, okay, this isn't how most of us work. And I would imagine the same has got to be within the arts community of, there's got to be divas. There's got to be folks within your community. And then you're like, this
Absolutely.
isn't.
It's just so easy to be nice. And it's so easy to care about other people if you allow yourself to. And I mean, it's more energy to be angry and mean and rude. And if I say something that might even be perceived as rude, like I immediately I hope you know that wasn't my intention. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's important too, because I think both of our work is very cerebral, and if anything, this has happened to me before, my show has been affected when I'm not in the right headspace. And if I feel like someone has been rude to me, or I've misinterpreted something that someone has said, I am not okay. And I have like a weird, like, what did I do? What did I do?
Yes.
Not self-imposed maybe, but also I think it just speaks to the nature of like, we need our brains to work. And if anything else extra is in there that's not serving us, then get rid of it.
I know I have to cushion mine before I go in. Like I have a rule now of like just about a half hour before I go into a reading, like no social media, no scrolling the news. I hate when you see these posts that are like heartbreaking and you see some asshole ha it and I'm like, oh, who are they? I'm like, you know what I mean?
I know,
like,
me too.
It's like
you get sucked in.
That's why I love taking readings earlier in the day, because there's less to rattle my cage by the time I meet with someone. So
right.
I guess final question, then we'll go into, I would love to talk about the reading.
Yeah.
Oh goodness, this is a good one too. How has your career being a performer, or in your case, I think especially being somebody who's doing so well, and then for me being a medium, does it impact your friendships or relationships? So you take it away, because I know you have.
I mean, just in the nature of being on tour, right? I am away from my friends and family. And my job, I think this role in particular, playing Elphaba, is very different than going on tour and playing just like maybe a role in a ensemble-based show or something else, because it is all consuming. I am very, very tired after I'm done. And I don't want to get on the phone and have an hour-long phone call, right? And also, I need to conserve my speaking voice. So I think just first and foremost in that way, I have trouble maintaining my relationships in terms of like catching up with people and maybe talking to a friend I haven't talked to in a while. And so it's almost like I need to rely on the fact that like those friendships are going to maintain, and like after this contract is over. And what this time has shown me is that they do live on, and people completely understand what I'm going through. But I mean, so that's in terms of friendships, that's what happens, which is sad. And I think ultimately some friendships will be lost, right? The ones that really needed to be coddled most of the time, I won't have time for that anymore. And maybe that's a good thing, right? I think in terms of family, my family gets it. They really get it. They try to come out and see me once a month, which is very, very kind. But it's hard. Sometimes I just don't want to talk to anybody. And that's leading into my, relationship with my boyfriend. That's been extraordinarily hard. We were supposed to live together right before I went on tour the first time. And then, of course, that got pushed away, and we only saw each other once a month. And I'm someone that needs things to be very tangible. And so that's very hard for me. And it's very hard for him. We said to each other, we almost forgot who we were, aside from like FaceTimes at night or FaceTimes in the morning once a day, or you forget who you are. And then we came back for quarantine and we were like, oh, this is who we are together. We're good together when we're in the same place, and we'll have to navigate that journey again when we go back out. But oh man, it is just very, very difficult. And of course, they're my biggest champions and supporters, as I am of them. But it's a really all-encompassing career, and it's not forgiving. Like, I'm missing one of my best friend's weddings, right when I go back. And I can't just take off for that. It's very unusual in that way, but we're just hoping people can be understanding and continue to be just wonderful. So
do you find that now that you're headlining a tour as Elphaba, is there a tendency to try to be like, hey, can I get your input on the tape? Or I would like to be seen for Alpha. Can you coach me through this? Or can you get me seen? Like,
it's less of that I'm finding, but I feel like used in other ways, and not by my truest friends, by acquaintances that are like, hey, can you sing on this? Or, hey, especially in this pandemic time, can you do this or do this or do this for free as a favor? And that I'm very sensitive to, because first of all, I'm not a tit for tat type person. I'm not like a you scratch my back, I scratch yours type person at all. But if you are my soul sister, my soul brother, my soul person, if you are my friend, and I know we have a really strong, deep connection, I will do anything for you. But don't take advantage of that if we are not close.
Yes.
And a lot of people have tried to, and taking advantage of kindness is never okay. And I had a lot of people to say, hey, can you record this for free? And can you do this for free and that for free? And eventually I just had to say, no, I'm done with that, because that's not fair and that's not right. And I have never asked an artist to do anything for free, even one of my close friends. I will never ask an artist or someone that gives of themselves in their work to do anything for free, because that takes a chunk out of you. People might not think, oh, but it's just one song. I'm like, but that's what I do for a living.
Bingo.
And that one song is all of the hard work. It's accumulation of all of the hard work that I've done every single year that I've been living. And also I give a little piece of myself in every song that I sing, and people don't understand that. And it's really upsetting when other artists don't take that into account. That's when it hurts the most, you know?
You struck gold, because it's an energy exchange. And so if you're watching the podcast at home or listening, for example, like, I'll just be very honest, like, for example, I didn't charge Talia for the reading. She didn't charge me to come on today, but it's still an energy exchange. It's like I gave of my time and my ability, as did she. So to me, I view that as different. But in terms of going, hey, can you just, or, you know, I guess to answer, it has impacted some of my friendships where if I want to do it of my own free will, because sometimes I'll get insight on a close friend. It's not often, but sometimes I will. So I'll just go, don't worry, this works itself out by August. Or, you know, I've got so-and-so here who's just saying, you know, they're aware of the secret journaling that you do to her. And those moments, it's because it's my choice, but there's been some times where I've had to go, is this what we're friends for? Like, is this just for like, I can't keep doing this. Like, you know, it bugs me if it's like how are you, by the way? And the how are you is not meant. This was a formality.
Yes, that gets me every time.
Or
it's just
by
like
the way, how are you?
Right. Were they miss you so much. No, you don't.
No, you wanted me to read. And I love when they go, by all means, no pressure. I'm like, no shit, there's no pressure. The ball's in my court. If I'm going to say no to you, I'm going to say no to you, and I'm not going to lose sleep about it, because it takes something from you. That's why I get so passionate about this podcast, because the parallels are so strong. Like, you leave a part of yourself with that client that you read. And because it's weird, like, there are clients now that I consider friends, because you bond so intensely with somebody for 45 minutes. Those experiences, like, now I have a little part of them and they have a little part of me. And like, I'll weep sometimes during a reading if it really gets to me. And there's moments where you just have to go like, okay, energy exchange. Like, if you don't recall that, or if you're not careful about, so yeah, I've definitely had to put some friends in check and go, I don't know. You know, I don't think I can read on this for you anymore. I have a great friend who's a great medium. Why don't I give you their number and ask about their rates, is what I say. And then it's like, boom, mic drop. And it's like, do you get what I'm saying? And then they're like, oh, sure. So, which I guess final topic. So I read you, first off, the story is freaking wild of how there's just so many folks at home. And I tell you, it's a small world. It's a small world. Like, and I always make the joke how every actor knows each other, but it's kind of true. For the folks at home, let's do the math. I read somebody who turned out to be your high school coach that got you prepped for Penn State.
Yes.
Apparently the reading went well. They left like a very kind, glowing review. I was so grateful. Long story short, I book a reading with somebody named Michelle. Sit down and I start talking about you, not knowing it. Now, mind you, at this point, I had also been told by Lindsay Heather Pierce, hey, I have a great friend that would like to have a reading with you. She's also an actress. I'm like, great. So I read Michelle and I start talking about a daughter. And I was like, oh, you've got multiple. Both are like fiercely talented. And your dad, Michelle, your father just wants me to have you tell your daughter that he was there for like, now mind you, I don't know that you're an actress yet because sometimes
Nope.
they don't tell me. I said he was there for like the big night, the ribbon cutting. And so no clue what I'm relaying. Find out at the end, she's like, would you want to know? I'm like, sure, you can tell me. She's like, well, my daughter is Talia. Talk about bragging rights. She's so cute. She's like, my daughter is Elphaba in the first national tour. Oh, you got to look, she's the best. And just just how kind and just the pride that was emanating from her.
Yeah.
But then I find out you at this point had already booked an upcoming reading with me. Your mom didn't tell you the name of the medium. So I literally it was wild that I read both of you. Neither of you knew that you were being read by like, what are the odds? Like,
it was just wild and really serendipitous because I had no idea that my mom was interested in doing this, but it's something that I really weirdly feel like every woman in my family is very spiritual. Mm-hmm. We all are. And it's something I think that we both separately wanted to do. And the fact that she came into my room was like, I just did this, and was just kind of all aflutter. And, she said things like that you had said that my grandfather was there for like the big night, and, he was present. And it was like, you said the date too. You said like a year and a half ago or something like that. And that was exactly the month of September of 2019, crazy. Which is exactly when I opened.
Get out
so
of here.
That just, whew.
And I remember after I got goosebumps because I used the expression, please tell her I was there for the ribbon cutting. And he said something like, to see her flying high.
Yes.
And I will never, I have goosebumps now to literally know then that I was then talking about somebody playing Elphaba who goes up in a lift nightly was like the craziest ass. Like you cannot, even as the medium, it doesn't lose its sense of awe and wonder doing this. And you hear something that's so random that comes out of your mouth. And like recently I read somebody and I was like, I want to talk about your spouse and the headbutting with their parents. And they're like, oh God, it's really bad. And I didn't know. I just came out of my mouth. I said, well, you do know that it's because your spouse isn't his brother. And they've got him on no one can beat the brother. I just said it out loud. No clue. And she was like, his brother passed when the brother was 13. So they very much memorialized the brother. If you don't mind, oh goodness, if you don't mind, whatever you feel comfortable about, could you talk about our time together?
Yes, absolutely. There was just so much. First of all, one really cool thing that came through to you was that I had a past life in Italy, which anyone that knows me knows that I love Italian culture and that I could eat pasta every day of my life. And that if I had another life, I literally say this, if I could just leave here today, I would go make pasta with the little old ladies in Tuscany.
That used to be I saw Under the Tuscan Sun years ago with Diane Lane, this like 14-year-old gay boy that is like, I think I'm going to own a villa in Tuscany one day and I'm going to find love and like the water's going to come out. Kindred. Yeah.
Kindred. Yes.
That came up right away, I want to say, with you.
That was the first thing you said. That's why it's the first thing I'm saying. And then the second thing you said, which I actively carry with me to this day and think about when I'm in a car, is you said you have a thing with control, which is absolutely true, and how control is a big thing for you, especially in a car. And you're like a bit of a front seat driver, back seat driver whenever you're not driving because you had some car accident trauma in your past life, in a past life.
Yes.
So that just like, woo, that got me because it's so true.
That's crazy.
Crazy. And then, my grandfather was the person that primarily came through, which no surprise there. He had the biggest personality. He loved people. He loved to talk. He was just a big New Yorker. And he was there. You said you saw him coming in with flowers, and he sat in the balcony for the first show so he could be eye level with me when I was flying. So that was really special. And then he's not with me on stage, but he is with me if I call on him and he's there, he's with me in like the 5 minutes I have alone as the show's starting.
Yes.
So really cool. And then you said you saw my dog that had passed away around him.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. Because it came up somehow about the dressing room or something.
Yes, yeah. There was that, but then you also saw, so you saw that picture in my dressing room, but then you also saw my dog that had passed away, like circling my grandfather,
Yes.
which is just, woo, that I had a very strong relationship with that dog. So that was amazing. And then, you talked about my relationship a lot and just some things that were really, really just hit home for my boyfriend when I talked to him about it, about his goals and aspirations, and just really cool insight into what he wants to do and what he needs to do to get to where he wants to be. And then as I'm going down, yeah, I think you just talked about, without revealing too much more, you talked about a little bit about my future, which was really cool and just like filled me with hope. I really just kind of felt very open right here and in my solar plexus after the reading, and it was wonderful.
I'm so
I'm
glad.
trying to think if there was anything else. I think maybe oh, I mean, you talked about, like, my grandpa talked about my grandmother a little bit, and how she needs to stay mobile in her life
Yes.
and mobility issues, and it was just really cool. And I think I've always wanted for my life, like, since I was a little kid, and my grandpa died 8 years ago now, so I wasn't a kid,
Sure.
but ever since I was a little kid, I would always lay in bed at night and like thank God, and then I would thank my ancestors. I'd be like, okay, and I would like name them all.
I do too.
Yeah, and so I mean, I don't do it as much anymore. I don't really do it at all anymore, to be honest, but I probably should, because that was a cool. I feel like as a young child, I was very just in tune with the spirits around me,
Yeah.
and when my grandpa passed away, he passed away super young. He was 70, and it was just I would always call on him. I call on him a lot. I continue to call on him. And so it was cool to know that he's listening and that he's there. He's really there. And it was just amazing to be able to connect with him in this way, literally connect with him. So I will just never forget it.
I also remember I talked about your ankle and I was like, you
Yes.
need to watch. And I was like, well, that's interesting because they showed me like the Elphaba boots. And then I was like, I was like, well, it's not the raked stage. It's not the Gershwin, but I'm like, you got to watch your ankle. And then you told me that you had an ankle injury years ago.
In college. I had an ankle injury in college, and it's, thank God, now okay, but it's something that I always need to watch. I have a weak ankle, and you said he's telling you to watch your ankles, and that just was like, what?
And I think be more cognizant of like how you move, because if you're listening at home and you're like, well, that sounds spooky, to be like, is something bad going to happen to my ankle? No, it's no different than if they were here in the physical and your mom's like, watch your ankle, or
right, exactly.
Your mom's not predicting, if your mom's alive, she's not predicting that you're going to hurt your ankle. She's just being protective because she loves you. That's exactly how it works with spirit. If you were stuck as a ghost in a theater for all of eternity and you could only watch the same musical over and over, what would you pick?
Oh my goodness. I want to say Ragtime.
Ragtime. And Michelle Ragusa, the one I told you about, she was the closing Evelyn Nesbit on Broadway.
Check that out.
So Knightley going on with like LaChanze and...
oh, come on.
Oh, goodness. I forgot who the rest of her cast was, but it was like bonkers. She was like original cast of Titanic with Victoria Clark. And recently, I was so crushed and pissed. I got an email to my junk, and the sender was, get ready, Victoria Clark. And I'm like, oh shit,
Stop.
oh shit. Calm
You're
down.
like, it's happening.
I'm like, it's happening. She knows about my work. And it's like, hello. And it was one of those spam emails. So it's like, I am the CEO of a branding thing. You have great potential at Stage Show Media. And I was like, damn it. I was like, I literally was like, one day I'm going to manifest Victoria Clark.
Yes, you will. I'm manifesting it for you.
Perfect. But not spam Victoria Clark. Any character you've played that you think would benefit most from having a medium read them?
Oh, wow. Oh, maybe Fiona and Shrek.
Oh,
she's got a lot of issues to work out, for sure.
She's got the part rage, the waiting. Fiona, that's a great, no one's ever, I think I've had some folks that have played Fiona and that's never come up. So that's a good choice.
Thank you.
Hundreds of years from now, when we're not here, how would you want folks to look back and remember Talia Suskauer?
Oh, she was just a super tall, goofy ball of energy whenever she walked into a room, and she was a really loyal, good friend, and she made the world a better place every day. Maybe.
You are such a light. You are.
Oh.
Talia, I want to thank you for being our guest today. Everyone at home, I'm going to put the links up where you can learn more about Talia. You can check out if you live in a city where Wicked is touring right now. Talia is the Elphaba that is going to be on the road bringing Wicked to you. It's going to be incredible. Talia, everyone at home, be well, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.